Okay, let us begin. Infinite Plane Saturnday, 3:30, 2024. And yeah, the fact that it's 3:30 doesn't mean we're any more or less likely to have a psyop. We can actually predict things. We can read the metascript. We can follow the predictive programming and analyze the immersive illusion it creates as they, the writers of our history, paint the zeitgeist. But there's no real prophets on the world stage. Not really in the sense that they would present what they're posting as prophecy. And generally speaking, on a 3:30 or a 3:3, you get a lot of people hyping up, and with good reason. It seems like there are, well, there, objectively speaking, there are many objective patterns, but I think we're reaching a stage where the signal to noise ratio is out of whack, and even some normies are noticing the stuff. I got a clip from Dan Bongino, who is lamenting the fact that nobody is waiting for the facts to come out. People are just running because they're going for engagement. So engagement has trumped truth. And we have been saying this exact same thing for quite some time. But I have a little clip here from Dan Bongino, who, again, total normie, right-wing conservative type, world stager, in that box. Not a criticism, but I think it's important to be aware of where people are coming from when you analyze what they say. And what he had pretty much explained here, and this is something that I've been saying for some time, is that, and I comment on it, I say we have to suspend judgment, that we have to not assume something's real until it's attended by facts. And if you go the other direction, you're immediately lost in a world of subjectivity. So let me go ahead and play a clip here.
But folks, it's incredible how, again,
This is Dan Bongino. Let me get to the part here where he makes the statement, and it doesn't mean anything coming from him. This is not a step towards skepticism or auto-hoaxing. It's almost meaningless coming from his position, but it does make a lot of sense from our perspective because we already enacted this.
But this is what happens in this media environment because there's money and engagement. Everybody wants to come out with a theory. It was a terror attack. It definitely wasn't a terror attack. That's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory. And it's a conspiracy theory. Why can't you just wait? Was it a terror attack? I don't know. It doesn't sound like one to me. But am I absolutely sure it isn't? No.
Now, he's treading dangerously close to auto-hoaxing, to agnosticism, to skepticism. I mean, this is really breaking the rules, and he doesn't know it, of course.
So maybe just wait. How freaking hard is this? Holy shit, man.
No. See, what Dan Bongino misses here is that if everyone waited and applied skepticism, they wouldn't believe any of it. They're rushed to believe. They don't have time to parse the facts for themselves. And they are shoehorned into accepting various premises based on emotional appeals and logical fallacies. All right, we are joined here by Adaptivia, Diana South, P. Trippa Osher, Rocco Calzone, Dua Sempera, Cubstar, Let's Go. Linda Curtis says, Bongino in a box. P. Trippa's volume is low. Is anybody else experiencing low volume? Truth That Hurts 21 says, Easter Sunday is now Transgender Day of Visibility. Easter is pagan, but still meant to ruffle feathers. Yeah, it doesn't really ruffle my feathers. I'm not a religious person. I don't celebrate Easter. And looking at it objectively, I'm like, it's really not a contradiction if you look at just the color schemes. And isn't Easter all about colored eggs and stuff? So I don't think it'll do anything but add to the mix. And these are obviously in-your-face provocations because this is meant to trigger the right wing who believe certain things. What is really the basis for a moral panic? They're all about the moral panic and traditional values, traditional concepts of sin, whereas the left wing is all about the pandemic panic, and their outrage is largely based at, quote, hate and misinformation. And I would say hate is a secular replacement for the quality that we would describe previously as, quote, evil. Cubstar says, is there a religious holiday that isn't rooted in paganism? It may even be that they're getting closer to their pagan roots. Maybe it's some kind of worship of Ishtar. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you look at the Thelemic religion, it seems to be that they are introducing a god of mix of male female, like androgynous Horus is who they venerate. So and it's based on the previous traditions. In other words, the same mystery schools have always controlled the world. Yeah, bunny and egg day. Well, these are all traditional symbols of what? Fertility. The egg in particular, Ishtar. I think there's also something I looked at a couple of years ago on an Easter, and it has to do with North Korea Day of the Sun, where they have a 3-day holiday where they worship their leader. Here we go. This is actually in mid-April, but I think it's basically how they worship Easter. I don't think they do eggs, but Day of the Sun is an annual holiday in North Korea. Birth anniversaries of the founder and eternal president. So they have a president who rules from up in heaven. But it's like a 3-day ceremony, and during this time, the dictator is the sun. All sun worship. In fact, their founder, Kim Il Sung, means sun, become the sun. Yes. 3 days after his death, it was renamed Day of the Sun. 3 days. I wonder where they stole that from. And I believe the present leader's grandmother is honored on Christmas Eve as the mother of the revolution. And I would also go so far as to say that the rockets that the North Korean military is always dangling around and threatening us with, yeah, those are just obelisks, part of the same sun worship. It's just dressed up more with military than with science fiction, as with NASA. But it's the same mystery school running this place. I mean, it's good news. The New World Order's not coming, it's already here. There already is only one government, one religion, and you're in it. Everybody you know is in the one world religion, unless they deliberately and consciously diverged and stepped out of it. If you don't consciously and deliberately step out of the screen, you are in it by default. That's how this thing works. You kind of have to think yourself out of it and deprogram yourself, because the default worldview is the one world religion. And the only place you can really go is a place of agnosticism and non-belief. We don't have the full picture. They have a false picture they believe to be true, so they're stuck in their little Plato's cave out of comfort, but they don't have any real answers. In fact, the true believers in this thing have lost the intellectual high ground and moral high ground a long time ago. Cubstar says, I'm not eating chocolate eggs if they came out of a bunny. Dewis in Paris says, President God. Oh yeah, Donald Trump is now selling $60 Bibles that have the American flag wrapped on the bottom of it. And I believe just today, he truthed something, he tweeted something. Here it is. Trump, on Easter Sunday, we proclaim with joy, Christ is risen. I'll play a little clip here. But then after this, he retweeted something on his own channel where he suggests, here it is, the crucifixion of Donald Trump. We'll get into that, but let me play this first.
Suffering and death of God's only Son and his glorious resurrection on the third day. On Easter Sunday, we proclaim with joy, Christ is risen.
Now, I do think he's talking about himself. It sounds like it. But here's an article from the Washington Times, which I have here, was shared on Truth Social, the crucifixion of Donald Trump. And this is a repeat of last year. Last year, they had the Last Supper skit on SNL, and Trump was there as Jesus. This is all repetition. But here he is, Washington Times, being described as having gone through this crucifixion-like situation. As Easter Sunday approaches, most of the world will commemorate the arrest, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Jesus drew crowds wherever he went. He was celebrated by a segment of the population, which in turn instilled fear in others. Political and religious leaders were concerned that his popularity posed a threat to their hold on power. The fear and hunger for power led some to want to eliminate him. They had Jesus arrested. They mocked him. They took him before Pontius Pilate in hopes Jesus would be adjudicated guilty and sentenced to death. Now remember, they ripped off his clothes and they auctioned them. Well, Donald Trump's suit that he wore when he was originally arrested there and he showed up in New York on 4/4 2023, he actually had that suit cut into 47 pieces and auctioned it off. So this is very much like Jesus. Goes on to say here, fearing his own position of power, Pilate famously washed his hands of the matter and allowed Jesus to be crucified. 2,000 years later, it seems, mankind's darkest nature hasn't progressed much. So the Christ killers are at it again, and this time they're going after Donald Trump. That's from WashingtonTimes.com. I thought it was parody. I was like, is this Babylon Bee? But no, that is not parody. If you didn't get that, that was not parody at all. Ted Stryker says, I'm still waiting on my Trump sneakers. Moving on here, going through your chats. G33 says, spring, fertility, equinox, season, sun worship. Yeah, it's all seasonal sun worship. And when you see the commies running laps around the Washington Monument, it's just a maypole. That'll be on May 1st, May Day, which is really the high point on the pagan calendar. 6 months opposite Halloween, which many would think is the high point, but no, it's actually this coming May Day. But April 8th is the next big thing to watch. April 8th, a lot of internet prophets are going to say we were right, or they won't say anything because they will be wrong. In other words, if they're wrong, you're not going to see them correcting themselves, adjusting their Kabbalistic gematria calculators, recalibrating all of their little tools they use to arrive at these predictions. No, they're just going to ignore it and move on to the next big thing. Diana South says, my ears are bleeding. I cannot stand the voice of that filthy, corrupt mortal. You talking about Trump? Rocco says, have you seen the Fallout trailer? The end of the world is not what it used to be. I have not seen the trailer yet, but I noted it's taking place in Vault 33. The public is being educated about Fallout, and that obviously is referring to a Fallout shelter. And we were discussing last night about how Godzilla is stored in sub-level 33. Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. So the nuke, Godzilla, the Fallout, Godzilla X just came out. Quite a lot to unpack here. Donna South says, I celebrate Resurrection Day, not Ishtar. Armin Ree says, greetings everyone. Mr. Trustworthy here says, Dan Bongino equals comedian Bill Burr. He's not fooling me. He talks exactly like Bill Burr and looks masky AF. Now, I've seen Dan Bongino. I've never seen him compared to Bill Burr, but I've actually seen him compared to, who was it? There's another guy at Fox. But, yeah, Dan Bongino is certainly a character. Let's see if I can figure out who else he's been compared to. But Bill Burr, could Bill Burr be playing the role of Bongino? Some kind of, what is it, satire? Sabotaging the other side? Well, actually, Bill Burr, I watched his comedy. He seems to be leaning towards trad right. All right, let's see what we have going on in my minds.com notes. And I put a link. If you want to follow the notes for the live streams, what we're going to discuss, what we have discussed, just go to the link on ips.monster. It says minds.com. James Hawk posted this. Why do people who have never seen this argue in favor of it so enthusiastically? And he's got an image of the blue marble, the globe. And my response is because it's a religious icon, not scientific evidence. And this is why you will never have an honest debate with a glurf, because they accept what's on the screen as scientific evidence. Doesn't matter if it's a cartoon, as long as it's coming from NASA, it's, quote, evidence. And they don't include in their assessment even the remote possibility that people in power who get all the money are capable of lying, or that the entire architecture of our government globally is literally predicated on lying and special effects. I mean, special effects, visual special effects are just one aspect of it. You have logical fallacies, you have mass psychological manipulation in a myriad of ways, which we're always talking about. And most recently, I've been discussing the immersive illusions created by predictive programming. Predictive programming isn't just about Bart Simpson's flashes a 9/11 on the screen with the Twin Towers in the background, even though these things are included. But predictive programming is more about painting a picture or even just creating perceptions through narratives and stories and repetition of themes. For example, Leave the World Behind had the White Lion boat crashing into the beach, and it connected a lot of themes. It's an oil tanker, climate justice, named White Lion, racial justice, references to 1619. So you have already here in that scene also the boat would call to mind even the Titanic. The Titanic is a metaphor for the West, and the West about to sink. It's been correlated with the Twin Towers. So there's story building over time. And then when you see subsequent events following these big productions that they have you watch because it's so immersive, the masses will respond and say, hey, it was just like that movie. And then the media will say, what an interesting coincidence. Eerie, in fact. It's just like the movie. Well, we've been following these eerie coincidences for a long time. And it's no more coincidental than watching a movie and the protagonist at the beginning is still there at the end of the movie. Like it's a script. We look at these things like they're coincidences. No, it's pre-planned. So when the Francis Scott Key bridge gets taken out by a ship called Dolly, which might be an inside joke about the surreality of it all, but what it specifically calls to mind is Francis Scott Key, national anthem. And the national anthem, the subject of a recent faux controversy, national anthem versus the black national anthem, Lift All the Voices, 1619 versus 1776. So you have these dynamics, and it turns out that the Francis Scott Key Monument in San Francisco was replaced after being vandalized by BLM. It was replaced by a monument to the initial Africans brought by the White Lion in 1619. So you have a direct connection between the theme, the storyline, and all the props in that movie relating to this particular event, which is even now just unfolding. And last night we brought up, and this was sent to me by Mr. Trustworthy, that Mountain Dew is in on the predictive programming right now. They put out something for the summer. It's going to be released. It's going to be Star Spangled Banner Splash. Splash like a bridge falling into a lake. Linda Curtis says the globe is an idol. Yes, I agree with that. It's a Baal worship, and it's an idol to Baal. That's actually the name of the god they worship. And you can see Baal Earth if you get into one of his symbols, the obelisks, and you fly up really far away. We are joined by Thirst for Truth. Gorilla says predicted, predicated. Yes. Yeah, what they're doing is they're doing what the advertisers do. They know that you just have to hear a message or see it and have it repeated a certain number of times, and then eventually you'll be entrained to the message and you will go along with it. Repetition and propaganda, these are synonymous terms. It's really about repetition and messaging being consistently repeated and echoed back. Feedback is a huge part of it. So there's this feedback loop where you're almost led to conclude just by looking at what's happening in the news that this is a natural consequence of the way things are. When really it's just the way that things are on the world stage, the consensus version of reality that we have all accepted. When we all accept, for example, the existence of climate chaos, well, then everything we see on the news that adds to that narrative will just be passively accepted. It's like, oh, just the other day. For example, very few people pay attention to the nuance of mass school shootings. They just assume, hey, these things are normal now. This is the new normal. And 50 kids got shot, terrible news, not going to look. I want to focus on positive things. That's the apathy of Normieville. The people in Normieville believe all the terrible stuff, but they don't give a damn. They're so apathetic. They've conditioned themselves not to care, which creates a sense of cognitive dissonance, and who knows what else. Who knows what psychological conditions are there for people who are legitimately traumatized by agitprop and are rendered or recognize that they're powerless to stop it, or they just go with the flow, which is just move along. Just let the authorities handle it. And then, of course, the people who are a little more conscientious are led into activism, left or right, based on what? Really just lies, political warfare, gets them to hate each other. Each side scapegoats the other for everything. And it's literally like that. And it's the dynamic here. It's a war between traditional and progressive values. But these are extreme parodies of each. And it's not meant to ever be reconciled. But those who aren't triggered by this stuff, those who aren't reacting to it, who are recognizing that it's all fake, we're not apathetic. I'm well aware of what is believed by Normieville, Woketown, and Trutherville, but I'm a non believer. And so I'm not obligated to care about fake dead people. Fake dead people's lives don't matter, except to those who believe in them. And for the longest time, they assumed they had the moral high ground. Like, I'm better than you. I'm holier, I'm truthier than thou, because I'm going to wait until people have had time to grieve before I question whether the event is real or not. That used to be the posture of truthers. They would shut us out. They would say, how dare you not believe? We have to find out for real, and then we'll know. And eventually, a lot of us just recognize, you know what, we're just not going to wait. We've been right too many times. We're going to preemptively be skeptical about every story uniformly. And it makes more and more sense when you look at how vast this actually is. The left wing doesn't call out right wing psyops, like, for example, the terror attacks that benefit right wing agendas. The right wing doesn't call out the left wing when they stage shootings, even though they're trying to take their guns. Why don't they call out each other's psyops? It's because the psy war encompasses both sides and it's against the people. It's not left versus right. It's mass media in the hands of government or the psyop entertainment complex targeting the masses. You could call this, I call it a religion. You could call it, I think it's actually, you would describe it as an info war. But people think, okay, it's an info war, so I'm going to go against the media. And they become alt media. Well, alt media is actually just controlled opposition. It's part of the same infrastructure. You can't actually win the info war. It's unwinnable. What's that expression? I think it was George Bernard Shaw, never wrestle with a pig. You both get muddy and the pig likes it. It's a big muddy pit. Dewis and Paris says, I missed the IPS Broken Bridge stream. Seems more significant than at first glance. I'm sure you mentioned the Mason-Dixon evidence of relevance from Civil War 2.0. Yeah, that was mentioned in a few places. The Mason-Dixon line established the borders between Pennsylvania and Maryland, and it symbolized the division in the Civil War. So there is definitely some significance there. From Britannica, it says, dividing line between slave states, south of it, and free soil. And again, we just talked about the 1619 project, the first transatlantic arrivals on the White Lion, and how that connects to Francis Scott Key and the Star Spangled Banner, and of course the bridge. Interestingly, the mayor there, his name is Brandon Scott, which may have some significance. The Scott really stood out to me. His birthday is 4/8, the day of the eclipse, which has connections to the Xing of America. And in Leave the World Behind, it implies the reckoning of the ship. The White Lion is about to hit. So there's some pretty significant connections, I think, between the broader message, the Civil War, because the Civil War schism is on that line, 1619, 1776, and these are correlated with the left and the right and their respective views on what America is. MAGA has one perspective, and the leftist, the Bidenites, they have this other perspective. Gorilla says pig quote was Twain. Yeah, I heard that too, but I've also seen it attributed to George Bernard Shaw. So who said it first? Like someone had attributed to Napoleon that history is lies agreed upon. And I've kind of expanded that to media, lies agreed upon. He said, never wrestle with pigs, you both get dirty, pigs like it. So George Bernard Shaw gets credit for that one, but maybe it could be misattributed. Don't ask AI, don't trust Wiki. You're going to have to do some investigation at your library. I've been spending a lot more time at the libraries, which used to be like my routine. But I just find that the internet is so shallow. It really is. And even if you're really digging deep into something, you can only get so deep into it before you hit paywalls, and I think you're missing a lot of nuance on anything. So I'm making it a point to go through my local libraries here and kind of bolster what I'm researching. And it's going to get worse as people become more and more reliant, like they're reliant on Google to tell them what to think. They're reliant on, if they become reliant on anything like Grok, for example, or ChatGPT, you're not going to be informed. These things have built-in guardrails. And you'll notice they started using the term guardrails to refer to the controlling of the flow of information after we started using it for that purpose. I put out a book called Guardrails about the way that free thinkers are steered back into the mainstream. So I use this term, which is only really used for literal guardrails, and you would look it up, and that's all you would find, references to metal guardrails. But I started using it to refer to misinformation. And now it's pretty commonly being used specifically to refer to AI. Guardrail, a railing guarding against danger, a barrier placed along the edge of a highway at dangerous points. Oh, you mean someone might start questioning the official version of this event. So you put a few individuals there to spread certain narratives which act as guardrails and keep people from falling off of the misinformation superhighway that we're all supposed to be on. If you go over the highway, you're not being led to any conclusions. You're at your own pace, which is slow because you're suspending judgment, and you're where we are. But that term guardrails, now look at this. I clicked news. The White House puts new guardrails on government use of AI. Many different articles referring to AI guardrails. And this is because people will be outsourcing their thinking. Hey AI, tell me what to think about this event, and then it will supply all the relevant information. Now, if you have something that's highly intelligent, well, in terms of its functions, it operates as a highly intelligent information aggregator. They're going to have to make sure that it censors itself. They're putting a mask on the mind of AI before we get our hands on it fully. That's what they're talking about. And so what they're doing is they're making it part of the AI algorithms so they're not wholly reliant on disinformation agents in the field. I also want to point out that Google has recently released this new policy on, quote, sensitive events. Sensitive events, which refer to events that they don't want discussed by non-authoritative sources. And this is basically referring to anything we're talking about. So if they can define it as sensitive, they can, therefore, they have a rule here that allows them to kind of exclude you from having any kind of input. A sensitive event is an unforeseen event or development that creates significant risk to Google's ability to provide high quality, relevant information and ground truth, and reduce insensitive or exploitative content in monetized features. The part that had me kind of scratching my head was when it said here, unforeseen events that create significant risks for Google's ability to provide high quality, relevant information and ground truth. From the very beginning, Google was already guardrailed, and they've been increasing that level of controls to prevent people from arriving at conclusions that they're not steering you to. But anyway, I'm pointing out that that term wasn't really used. Now it's used, and it was the name of the book that I wrote to describe the process. And now if you search for it, you're going to find these new terms used by government. But of course, it's all for your own good. But my point here is that they're trying to get rid of the individual. They want to remove the individual. Now you're all part of the hive mind. Your information has to be approved by the state. It has to be hive mind approved. They don't want individuals to need mental immune systems. In fact, they want to remove it. They don't want you to have critical thinking or have a need for it. They just want everyone to essentially operate as though we have a hive mind. And they're very close to that. I think they're pretty much there. They are there with the political left, who are really mad and in fact terrified of catching mind viruses from the right. A little history here on this. Before we had the social distancing, which was then followed by censorship, which was the mental equivalent of the same, separating left and right, you actually had something called safe spaces in college campuses. And these safe spaces were for leftists to segregate from conservatives and conservative ideas. In other words, conservative mind viruses. So they were already needing a place to quarantine because they have MAIDs, mind aids, no mental immune systems, and they want to be protected from ideas that haven't been, of course, approved. So as we move forward in the future, you're going to see the guard railing is going to keep people in a safe space. I've called this before the safe space age. They're creating a safe space for mind viruses, and they're using X. That's why I call it Disease X. They're using X to make the case to the public that we need to have cyberspace turned into a safe space. Because look what it's doing to people. And they have plenty of things they can point to as an example of why we need to be protected from, quote, disease X or mind viruses. And this is why it's more important than ever to be your own source and get the best material you can without relying on their filters or merely picking from within their box. You know, I talked about Don Bongino being in a box, Mike Rothschild's in a box. Rothschild is in a box because he's mainstream mediated, he's MSM, he has a Truman Show perspective. You know, he's part of the program and he believes all the lies. He doesn't stray, he doesn't know it's a set. And his job is to criticize the critics of the mainstream view, who would be MSM plus, the conspiracy theorists. So day in, day out, he's criticizing conspiracy theorists on Twitter, deranged practically about it. I mean, it's like Trump derangement syndrome, but he's got it for anybody MAGA, anybody talking about predictive programming, suggesting it's paranoia or it doesn't even exist. And he can't see it from his perspective because he's in media, and for him to admit that predictive programming exists and that it's actually being used as a tool of propaganda would mean he would have to step outside of his box, which tells him that the media networks are compartmentalized. See, he sees like Fox as an enemy, for example, InfoWars as an enemy, CNN as his friend. It's like, no, they're all in the same big box. But if you're compartmentalized, you're not going to be able to see predictive programming. He literally cannot see it. He'll have to deny it. He'll have to deny it and explain it away, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. And it's a recent development. I've noted that people are becoming, and talking about even Trutherville, who are largely misdirected, they're becoming increasingly quick to automatically reject stuff. The problem with it is they're only rejecting the mainstream. We don't see enough internal criticism, enough rejection of the info glut from their own side, the misinformation glut. It's bad. And about the eclipse, on 4/8, I have a list of the top eclipse doomsday prophets who are using gematria calculators and everything else. If nothing happens, if we get nothing but nothing burgers on 4/8, I'm going to dedicate a video to all of the false prophets, and I'll offer my best explanation for what I think is the cause of it. Do as Sampera says, once we're using AI tools for everything, we become the tools. Yes. Gematria 101 says, years back, Google gave a grant to create 400 independent media outlets. It's just more Googles with 400 different names. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have one media, and it's split up into so many different facets, but it's monolithic. The symbol of the monolith is one of the most important symbols, I think, to understand in this context, because we understand history just shows us that we've had power elite with their worldviews. Religions are used to filter people into a certain worldview. You know, the state has a monopoly on worldview formation. And it's no different now, but now it's being executed through mass media. And your black screen, that monolith, represents the same page that we're all on. It's our holy book. Okay, I want to address some comments I got on Odyssey. If you're listening on Odyssey, I do check the comments, and I have some here from last night I want to address here. So, Uglarm says, And he's talking about something I said about 9/11. He said, Tim Osmond says, on 9/11 there was a Terminator poster at Ground Zero. Let me see some proof to that. Sure. And I didn't say it was the Terminator. I said it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is, of course, the Terminator. But it's actually the movie Collateral Damage. So there's a video floating around, and you can find an article about it called 2 Years Later Images, a Rare View of September the 11th. And it's also mentioned in an article entitled 15 Movies That Had to Be Changed Because of 9/11. Well, at Ground Zero, there was someone at 8:45 a.m. in an SUV. Here we go. Found tape holds rare glimpse of first strike. Here's an article about it. It says here, they did not even see the airplane streak across the screen at 8:46 a.m., but their camera was pointed at the Twin Towers from the seat of an SUV in Brooklyn, near the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, and it kept rolling. Billowing clouds of smoke and dust emerged from the North Tower as though it had sprung a mysterious leak. So this is a reference to someone who was randomly recording the Twin Towers, and you had Arnold Schwarzenegger there with the billboard Collateral Damage, just looking over. And there was another video that also had the same billboard. So here's someone who's recording saying, look, they're beautifully visible, the two tallest buildings in New York, 411 meters. The SUV continues down the tunnel. There's a sign that says drive carefully, 8:45 a.m. Panning to the left, they zoom in on a poster for the Arnold Schwarzenegger film Collateral Damage. The top of the tower was then struck. So here's an article describing this handheld camera view, the first glimpse of 9/11. And it mentions that, yes, this first glimpse did have Arnie's face looking over it, and afterward you had him staring down at Ground Zero, and this was remarked on as well. Here's an actual picture of it. Anniversary approaching, and you have Arnold Schwarzenegger just kind of leering down at everybody. And of course, this is all symbolic, it's all intentional. These actors aren't just performers on TV playing whatever roles that they're able to score, but these are roles that have meaning that extend beyond the mere movies. These are archetypal roles. The Terminator is an embodiment of Saturn, Lord of Darkness, kind of like Darth Vader, same archetype, but the T2 has meaning also, just the logo we could get into. But the Terminator is also a reference to Apollyon, or the destroyer in the abyss from Revelation 9/11. And of course, reigning over the abyss, 9/11, King Abaddon, or Apollyon. And again, Apollyon is a reference to Terminator or ex-Terminator. So these are all built into the visage, the image, the face of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Your subconscious mind merges all these things together. These are mashups. These are composite characters, and they carry with them all the previous associations. This is part of how predictive programming works. And the fact is, they had to change this and many other movies because their storylines were too close to 9/11. Because, of course, sensitivity, or maybe because it's too much of a giveaway. I mean, these aren't the only examples, and there are so many conspicuous examples we could point to of various movies that lead up to everything. Here's a list. We have Air Force One, Die Hard films, Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears, which, as we often talk about here, Sum of All Fears was an audiobook format of Sum of All Fears was being listened to by the astronauts on 9/11 as they watched 9/11 happen from space, if you want to believe it. Gorilla says, virtual panopticon prison society. Agreed. Isabel Ann says the AI chatbots are liars. You know who else are liars? Truthers. Truthers are some of the worst liars, and they're shameless about it. People will put their faces on a lie and repeat it on TikTok, and then you'll look beneath their little 1 minute whatever they're doing, whatever they're telling their little truth about, and it's like, community note, they're completely wrong. I'm like, wait, your face is on this, you're lying, you accuse the media of being liars, and you're not even correcting your lies. At least the mass media, when caught, will correct its lies. Well, in a way. I mean, they will correct it to the agreed upon consensus reality, but doesn't mean necessarily it's the truth. You see, the mainstream gives us facts. Alt media gives us alternative facts. And these are all of equal value in the subjective world of the, um, well, the subjectivity of today has allowed it to be possible for these to coexist. All right, I'm going through my references here on this thing about the collateral damage billboard. So here's an article referencing the same thing. As life returned after September 11, 2001, New Yorkers could see what the terrorists had done. On Canal Street, Arnold Schwarzenegger's face glared menacingly from a billboard promoting his latest thriller, Collateral Damage. What good placement, he thought, that the tower should be behind the billboard. Yeah, nice coincidence. There's another interesting coincidence, which was first pointed out to me by JLB, and then Chartword has a great article about it. But it's the building, the Hilton, actually, it's the Hilton Monolith Hotel at Ground Zero, designed specifically to look like the 2001 Space Odyssey's monolith. And interestingly enough, that is probably one of the biggest clues to 9/11, the monolith. And it all has to do with the meaning of the movie 2001 A Space Odyssey, which I think was foreshadowing 9/11. And that's not a stretch, that they would have predictive programming 33 years in advance. Stanley Kubrick has indicators that 9/11 was going to occur in this way back as far as 2001 Space Odyssey, but even The Shining specifically has a lot of 9/11 predictive programming and references to Apollo 11. Not a confession, not winks to truthers that he feels bad for tricking the world, but no, this is just standard operating procedure. But what's more, the sequel to The Shining is actually about a child who predicts 9/11. Okay, let's move on. Catching up on my notes. If you have anything to add, I'll open up the phones. Isabel Ann says the pandemic of lying. I like that. You know, I actually call this the lie world order. I think it makes a lot more sense. I spent a lot of time writing and thinking about lies, and I've been working on a manuscript about this concept because, it's not as simple as just, you know, um, committing a lie, saying something untrue, but there are so many levels to it. And then there are carriers of lies who don't know that they're carrying falsehoods because um, they're conformists. But there's a lot of unwitting liars, and then there's self-deception. There's sleight of mind, and the intentional deceiving of others through logical fallacies. There are just so many elements to it that the word lie it needs to be, I think, a little more nuanced when we talk about what lies are. And the word lie doesn't exactly explain it all, but when we're talking about media itself, we can all agree that it's a version and it's an interpretation. It's not the exact thing. And so then we have to really determine, well, how far is this thing from a window to the world? How much of it is a filter? How much is filtration? How much is authentic? And then what is being excluded purposefully? Lies by omission. One of Aleister Crowley's books, The Book of Lies, I think is a major hint to how this world actually works. All right, let's see. But it's hard for people to admit, that they're liars, that they're lying to themselves, that they've been lied to, that they've accepted a lie, and now they promulgate that lie. It's difficult for some people. When a lie has taken root, and news promulgates propaganda lies all the time, and then people will defend these lies, like their ego depends on it. It's like, what do you mean we didn't land on the moon? We showed those Russians. It's like, you didn't land on the moon. You maybe heard about it. You didn't watch it on TV. But say they say it like it's like a matter of personal pride. Now here's a picture of somebody playing the role of Donald Trump holding a Bible with an American flag design on the bottom, and it says, "God bless the USA." Now, I don't know if they rewrote it or changed out or swapped out Jesus with Trump, but he's selling these for $60. You could now. How much are the golden Trump sneakers? Okay, here's an example. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about liars. This guy is a liar. Now I don't know who this is. He's just one of these TikTokers with the annoying finger, a finger wagging TikToker. They're so annoying. They wag their finger right in front of the lens. So like read this, read this. You're trying to read through their finger, and their face is just there staring at you, making expressions and nodding their head smugly. So you got these smug, nodding, finger wagging TikTokers blocking the screen, telling you, believe what I'm telling you in the next 30 seconds. It's not misinformation. So he says here, the CEO of the company that owns Container Ship died 6 years ago. You won't believe what she's related to, because of course you can't trust the media. So you got to listen to alt media. Well, let's listen to this alt media influencer.
News alert. Everyone should know this, okay? So the shipping container here that just took down the bridge in Baltimore, okay? There's a little backstory. Let's get into it real quick. You're just gonna blow your mind. So this is Angela Cheo, who just so happens.
Now, the music's generic and annoying, but here's what he's saying. Sister-in-law of Mitch McConnell was the CEO of the shipping company, but not the owner. Okay, this is fact-checked. Well, it's fact-checked. My point is this. This story came out, he's gone viral for it, and then immediately after, fact-checkers point out, no, actually that's false. There's no connection between her and the ship that hit the bridge. Multiple fact-checks, USA Today, AFP, and PolitiFact. So what makes the truthers run with this and share it without vetting it? Because it's not mainstream. If it's not mainstream, they trust it. It's like do-it-yourself media. It's contrarian, knee-jerk contrarianism, which is not exactly the same as skepticism. They're anti-mainstream. In other words, there's liars and truthers, and none of them are based on objective facts. It's just another version of liars. So this individual is a liar in my definition, and he's been called out as a liar, but is he going to delete this? No. Are people still going to share it? Yes. I've been following the story of P. Diddy a little bit. It looks like another Epstein-like drama that will lead nowhere. Nobody's going to get arrested. Nothing's going to be revealed. But someone sent this to me. This is from Instagram. It's a picture of Diddy's son, King, with his red dog. Looks like they painted it. But people are pointing out that he has Illuminati pajamas. All these celebrity children do this stuff. Like Tom Hanks' son Chet has the Illuminati symbol on his chest. Oswaldo says, no wonder they banned TikTok. These people are annoying. Yeah, that's why I don't use TikTok. The reason I do not use it is I will not have a bunch of people clamoring to get in front of the screen, wagging their fingers, telling me where to look. If somebody says look and they point at something, I don't. People actually have called me out. They get mad. They tell me to look at something and I don't, because I am very averse to taking orders. I'm polite, but after the army, I decided that nobody's going to tell me what to look at, and I see these finger waggers and it just annoys me. You can call Skype. We could do Discord. I don't know though. Discord is very resource intensive, and if I turn Discord on, it might cause buffering. We can try it though. Jake the A-hole says TikTok flat earthers who have zero YouTube presence are the worst. Flat earthers who only post on TikTok and get hundreds of thousands of views, just repeating 2015 Eric Dubé crap. Exactly. And they take it in bites out of context. It's the sea of irrelevance. So the truth is out there now. Everything about how this world works is probably out there and published. Public domain, no deep web, you can just find it. But good luck painting a coherent picture. Good luck, because the public has been rendered incapable of seeing the picture. Okay, it looks like a lot of people are having problems calling in, ringers on. It could be something beyond my control. Very interesting. Try getting Skype. If that doesn't work, I might have to try a different phone system, but we might be dealing with some kind of sabotage. It can't be a coincidence that for the last 3 days, no one has been able to get through. And I see the numbers piling up on my list of recent chats, but they're not able to call in. I'll figure it out. It's a technical issue. In fact, here's what I'll do. I hate doing technical things on the fly. I want to stay focused on the information. Let's just take a short break. I will be right back. Let's put on Death to the Ball, and I'm going to be working on something here. I'm going to kill a gremlin. Okay, I believe I fixed it. I have I have a second computer on where I have Skype, and I had it on there as well. So my Discord computer is now off because Skype was on there and it was intercepting the call, so that's been fixed. But now we don't have Discord, but I'll get that fixed after the live stream. A little bit of juggling involved in this. All right, let's move on here. I think we have another Instagram-er, no, TikToker, and this person is talking about CERN and how the world's going to be CERNed on the 8th. And a few other little tidbits here having to do with anniversaries of things like Aleister Crowley channeling Satan.
On April 8th, the same day as the X eclipse, same day in 1904 that Aleister Crowley first channeled Aiwass, an entity that he identified as Satan. They remained in communication for 3 days until the 10th of April. April 10th is the same day that CERN will be firing up its proton synchrotron booster. Same window that CERN is firing back up is the same window that Aleister Crowley channeled this entity Aiwass, who he called Satan. During the time that Aleister was communicating with Aiwass, he was told to draw an X. This is the Great American X eclipse.
Now, just to give you a little background on this, the Book of the Law is the Bible of the Thelemite cult. This is the thing Jack Parsons was working out of with L. Ron Hubbard when they were summoning the Antichrist, and then UFOs came down for Marjorie Cameron. Interesting stories, but the Book of the Law is said to have been channeled over a 3-day period. I think he was on a coke binge in Egypt, and he had seen the stele of revealing, stele number 666, which was an image of the god Horus ascending or rising. I have an image of it here on the screen if you go to Wikipedia about Book of the Law. But the story is he was channeling an emissary or messenger of the god Horus named Aiwass. And on April 8th, he received this channeled book. And over a course of 3 days, they had their Bible revealed to them. And it's about the New Age, the Age of Horus, the crowned conquering child, and how the new world would look once the old paradigm had been taken down, down the patriarchy, and up with the Whore of Babylon. Interesting material here, but yeah, it's said to be a channeled book, and of course, this is an anniversary of that. And in this book, they mention the mark of the beast as an X, which makes sense when you look at what they mean by beast. He called himself the beast, which is their new version of Christ. The Scarlet Woman is the Magdalene, the consort, the Isis to the Osiris. Anyway, let's go back to this clip here.
Eclipse, because the 2017 and the 2024 eclipse are making an X over the United States. April 8th is also the same day that NASA will be firing 3 rockets at the eclipse, possibly causing some communication disturbances. The second rocket will be launching at 3:22. 3:22 is associated with skulls and bones.
322, yes. And the rocket they're launching is APEP, which is... Okay, you know, I have it on 3 computers. I have to shut off the other computer as well to get the phones on. Give me just a moment.
2022 was the same day that CERN started warming up in preparation for April 8th. CERN's antimatter factory will be firing up on April 22nd, the first day of Passover, a holiday associated with sacrificing lambs. And we know about these red heifers.
Now, what is this thing with CERN rituals timed with pagan ceremonies? It's because CERN is pagan. It's Cernunnos worship, light god, earth god, horned god. It is just more mystery religion stuff dressed up with science fiction. Okay, I'm going to have to take another break here. I'm going to turn off the secondary computer. So if you're listening on the audio streams, we're going to terminate so I can get Skype on. So just a moment. Okay, now we should be able to receive calls momentarily. So if you have something to say, you want to call in, the number's on the screen. If you are listening on the audio streams, well, you're not listening now, I apologize, but I would have to make some extraordinary efforts to maintain the continuity of that while doing this and shutting off Skype over there. Okay. And I'm having another thing as well. I'll be right back here. We are live Infinite Plane Saturnday, having some technical issues, and we're in the process of fixing those. So appreciate your patience, everyone, and your support, without which this channel would not be possible. And I'll have everything in order and fixed and working appropriately here very soon. It's just we're working out a few bugs and working within the limitations of the software. You know, Discord is great, but it has some issues with it. Be right back.
I'm on auto hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soul.
All right, we are back and phones are open, 505-349-0420. Let's see if we can get back on track here. So I started looking at comments left behind on Odyssey. I think I addressed those. Got some lyrics here. John Mayer. Any of you John Mayer fans out there? Here's a lyric from him. And when you trust your television, what you get is what you got, because when they own the information, they can bend it all they want. Kind of a reference to newsbenders. Oswaldo says, wanted IPS tech guy. Well, I'm the tech guy, but I'm only here part-time. I'm doing a lot of artwork these days, but I'm moving towards... Yeah, Alnufel says they're sabotaging the stream. It could be. Could be. We're having a lot of issues, and I hate doing tech stuff live because I'd prefer not to talk about tech stuff at all. There's no point to it. It doesn't add to the conversation. It doesn't age well. It's like, what's the point? You know, tech issues are always going to be there, no matter how good things get. All right, let's move on. Phones are open if you can make it work. A lot of people are talking about this. The Space Agency's project, APEP, atmospheric perturbations around the eclipse path. APEP named after the serpent deity from ancient Egypt, the nemesis of Ra. So someone here suggests that they are perhaps trying to scare off the dragon, trying to eat the sun. So they're sending rockets up on that day. CERN's being powered up. And everybody's looking up, which is kind of interesting in itself. All the Project Bluebeam people are looking at this. And it got me thinking about the movies Don't Look Up and Nope, which both feature people looking up in horror or in shock. End of the world stuff. Again, Don't Look Up, about the world ending because of capitalism. The Titanic sinking, Don't Look Up, has Leonardo DiCaprio as the face of it for this reason. It's to convey this messaging. Like I mentioned, Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's a similarity here where Leonardo DiCaprio is meant to call back the Titanic. And by the way, the day before the bridge was hit, the door of the Titanic, the one that wouldn't fit, was auctioned off for 700,000 plus. The day before. So the day before I'm mentioning the Titanic is out there in the metascript. What is going on? Foreshadowing? Okay, apparently Skype isn't working, or we're having a lot of issues. We'll deal with it in a few more minutes. Let's get through the rest of the notes here. Caitlin Rita says some privileged white women get punched in the face in New York City, and the far right is pissed about it. You all used to whip black people and had no problem with it, but now it's an issue when a white slave owner's descendant gets karma on behalf of her ancestors. You should be thankful it's only a small hit. Okay, my response to that argument only holds water if you can make the case for intra-racial reincarnation. Because we don't know. I mean, maybe someone here knows. Does anybody have any information? Oh, back computer restarted, so that's why I turned off the other computer, and it turned back on. Infinite Plane Radio. Hello? I think we're back on. Hey, what's up?
Hello. Hey, it's Harmon. How you doing?
Oh, good. What are you calling about? What topic has piqued your interest?
Yes, well, I was trying, since then we've moved on, but it was still about the key bridge. Something came to my mind that may or may not have relevance. This is just, exploring the thought and putting it out there for for you and other people to think about. I was thinking something came to my mind. There are two keys in the papal insignia, in the coat of arms of the Pope. And these are called the keys to the kingdom. Now, if you look at the insignia, one is pointing east, the other is pointing west. So I was wondering if the fallen bridge, which was the key bridge, could have been the western bridge, or that in that case, the western key being broken. Because in Revelation, when Jesus appears to John, he says he holds the keys of death and hell. So I was wondering if that has any symbolic significance to the metascript.
Oh, interesting. Well, I know we were talking about Revelation 9:11 just now, and the connection between the sinking of the towers and how this kind of relates to the Titanic, which, of course, the Titanic movie has significance, but the director was at the Titanic on 9/11, furthering this connection. But the Titanic, I'm sorry, the Revelation 9:11 refers to this angel having a key to the bottomless pit. So there's a lot of interesting stuff with the key thing I've been trying to figure out lately, and I hadn't thought about that. So you may be onto something. There's no way it's just a coincidence when it comes to these props. In fact, I was just
Yes,
watching
because
Donnie Darko's, Jake Gyllenhaal's latest movie, Roadhouse, and it's all about this bookstore called The Glass Key. So, yeah. Anyway, what's your take on it based on this?
no, it's just speculation at this point, just came to my mind. And I remembered that the papal flag has the two keys, which are called the keys to the kingdom, that supposedly Jesus gave to Peter to, hold the church. And I was wondering if just coming from that point of view, just for the sake of argument, if the Western key was broken, what would be the Eastern key? Would it be Russia, for example, because it's a Christian country as well? I don't know. Just putting it out there for
Okay.
people to think about.
Well, here's one thing. When we're looking at the 1619 versus 1776 dialectic,
Hmm.
1619 is about a rejection of the West and our concepts of individuality over collectivism. And the idea of communism, I use the term lowercase c, just collectivism versus individual property owners, etc. But there's been this repeated theme that the West is making it so the world can't breathe. Derek, Western chauvinism, kneeling on George Floyd, I can't breathe, Gaia can't breathe. It's been a repeated theme. Well, I can't breathe is an anagram for a better China. So, right before the riots of 2020 took off with BLM, which is a Marxist movement, you already heard this slogan being chanted, I can't breathe, which again anagrammatically says a better China. And so I thought, well, maybe this is true, what the Weather Underground and others said, that the Black Panthers would be the vanguard of the communist revolution. And I think you could make that case, BLM being a continuation of this, that we're looking
Mm.
at I can't breathe, a better China, communism. So again, it may tie into this West and East.
Yeah, well, because the link to Revelation, and of course, Revelation is the script that's being followed in terms of the metascript. And if the keys there are connected also to the appearance of Jesus to John, then it could the falling of the key bridge, the breaking of the key bridge, which would be, for example, the key to hell or to death in that passage, which would be the Western key. If the key to the East, whichever it is, that I don't know, would be broken as well. And let's imagine that it's in Russia, because there's this thing now between USA and Russia again. If that could mark the script point where this new Jesus in the metascript would be presented and would appear to John, let's say, to the disciple.
Now, I do think that we do have a new, like, I don't think that a guy's going to come up and say he's Jesus. Like, it's certainly not Trump. But I do
Mhm.
think that they have introduced a new Christ archetype for the new age, for the new paradigm, the progressive worldview. And I think what we have seen with all of the martyrs from BLM, from Trayvon Martin to more recent Terry Nichols to George Floyd, I think what we have been seeing repeatedly has been the archetype of a crucified black Christ, which has been like repeatedly put out there for years. So I think what they've done is they've created the ultimate martyr, the ultimate, you could say, oppressed or victim of Western society would be, of
Mhm.
course, those who are under the knee of the police, who are protecting the propertied class, who are polluting and destroying the world. You know, we need climate justice, etc. All of it's very symbolic and theatrical, though, about the death of the West. That's why I point out that Derek Chauvin's name is significant. Derek means hangman, or it comes from a hangman, and the Proud Boys called themselves Western chauvinists as they go after BLM. So you have the hangman of Western chauvinism kneeling on a representative of the underclass for 8:46, which is the exact time the sun set that day and the exact time 9/11 kicks off. So the sun setting on the west, there's a lot of messaging in this,
Mhm.
but the bridge thing
Yeah.
is certainly a part of this because of
Yeah, well,
the
uh,
anthem.
we have observed that for several years now, and that is also sort of a correlation to Christians, that the Qs have been waiting for the world to be saved by this organization. So I also agree that Jesus, the new Jesus, will not be presented as an individual, but as a collective, because we are going into the age of collectivism. So the savior would be collective. It would be an organization, probably. You wouldn't know the names of the people in those or in that organization. And of course, I'm not saying that this is factual, but in the metascript. Okay.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
class.
so
It's a class of like a class of victims, and
right.
that goes along with the Marxist concept of creating workers, the poor, the oppressed, and so that's why they had created this representative. So it's not one charismatic person or one miracle worker, but it's this composite that they've built over time, pretty effectively. And one of the
Mhm.
repeated themes has been the name Trey, like Trayvon or Tyree. It all does connect to the Masonic story, Hiram of Tyr, and the repeated theme has been, I think, the introduction of this new Christ, and it's all in the iconography. And this is why you have characters like, for example, Ye, whose name West is very significant. His West world, his world is burning. You see this happening. It's like all in this theme of his life where his house is burning. He comes out as a burning man, as a phoenix, but Ye presents himself as a Christ. You have like the deliberate conflating of this, Messiah complex with certain celebrities. And again, it's all by design, though. This is all propaganda.
Right. Like I said, this is speculation on my part and just presenting it for people, to participate and think about. Maybe they certainly will know more than me. But I would say that if there's anything to this speculation, we could look at an Eastern country such as Russia, for example, or China, or an Eastern country, some Eastern European or Asiatic country that would have a monument of some sort that had a designation or a correlation to being a key as well. And if that is the case, it would be interesting to follow it closely to see if there's any psyop being played out there. Because if there are two keys, and like I said, it's merely speculation, something came to my mind. If there are two keys, and if the two keys are broken, then the kingdom, in the sense of what the papal insignia means, which is the keys to the kingdom, heaven will be inaccessible, but hell will be open, right? So again, this is just symbology, speculation, nothing more.
Sure, sure. The silver key and the gold key. The silver key is the key to the temporal realm, and the gold key is the key to heaven. And above that, you
Hmm.
have the Pope's tiara. All kinds of interesting symbolism here. And right now, the the individuals with the keys to the kingdom would be people like Elon Musk, because we're talking about
Mm.
the keys to heaven. I mean, it's part of the symbol of the papacy that if you want to make it to the heavenly realms, you got to go through them. They are
Yes,
the
he's the
ultimate.
Pope. Yeah,
Yep.
he's the Pope now. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But the Francis Scott Key Bridge falling, when I'm looking at this thing, people are like conspiracy theorists are out there saying it was hacked, it was DEI, it was the Vax, it was ISIS. They have all these explanations for who did it. That's classic. They go to who done it instead of what is it. And I'm looking at
Hmm.
it thinking, what is it? Would it even happen like this? If a shipping container hit that post, would we expect would we have expected this in a hypothetical, like, hey, what happens, you talk to someone who perhaps works on bridges or designs bridges, if a shipping container hits this, is it all going to fall? I don't think the answer would be yes. I don't think it would fall so easily, like it's made out of Legos, which makes me
Right.
think that this was controlled, and every conspiracy theory
Hmm.
is misdirection.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Of course, it's obviously controlled, and there are several similarities to 9/11. Even the idea that that the ship hit a twin pillar, right? So, and as it hit the twin pillar, the whole thing collapsed on itself. So yeah, there are several correlations. What I was doing here is, like I said, putting it out there for people to think about, together, and maybe there is something to it, maybe nothing, and if nothing, move on.
Do you have any take on Dolly?
I wasn't. I was trying to call you on Discord. I missed that one.
Oh,
What about?
just about the boat's name being Dolly, like
Ah,
Salvador Dali.
Dali. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it has the connection to the Broken Bridge painting, for sure. Yeah, the painting that he did.
Yeah, I think so
Yeah.
as well. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate the call very much. And yeah, this key talk is very important. And in Freemasonry, you often hear about the keystone, which
Mm-hmm.
is very significant in describing, like, well, the arch, the top of the arch, the keystone holds it all together. But yeah, there's nothing here that is separate from that. The water was 47 degrees. They kept on repeating this, the number 47, and the number 47 also refers to, I think it's the degrees on the compass that it's open up to. But
Mm.
also, this is the presidential race, number 47. So there's quite a lot here to look at. But one of the most telling things to me that suggests this is all scripted is the Francis Scott Key memorial being replaced by a 1619 memorial at the Golden Gate Bridge, which I heard someone
Mhm.
suggest that maybe this Francis Scott Key, maybe the key there refers to the Golden Gate. There might be some connection with the gate and the key. Not sure,
Mhm.
but it's there.
Which would again refer to the papal insignia, the golden key, the golden gate. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. You nailed it. That's what
Yeah.
I was thinking.
Mm.
Golden Gate.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I appreciate the call. If you have anything else, put it in the comments. And thanks for
Okay.
your persistence while I was working my way through the. I had to shut off Skype on two backup computers and my phone. So
Oh, sorry about that. I did ask about Discord, but since you said you couldn't do it through there, I called through here.
I'll be
Okay.
testing it out. I will test out Discord for future reference. In the past, it's been kind of a resource hog, but it might work on this computer. Anyway, thanks for the call, Armin Ree, and
Thank you.
feel free to post a link to your podcast in the chat. I think someone was asking.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank
All right, phones are open and fixed. Kevin Mooring says, scene in Terminator 1984, John Connor tells Sarah Connor that 40 years human destruction from 1984 is 2024. Okay, the Terminator movie had a prediction for 2024. It also had 9/11 predictive programming. Terminator's another James Cameron, who brought us, of course, the Titanic, which has 9/11 predictive programming in the way it splits into and falls or sinks. But that's interesting. John Connor, JC, Savior, stopped by the Terminator. You're looking at more symbolism here, of course, of Jesus Christ. And the Terminator is a reference to the Terminator line, when the night kills the day, the line that divides night and day. Angle of Elevation says, is that the Twin City? Yeah, the Twin Cities, 5/25/2020, sunset 8:46. And of course, Floyd kneeled on. And the kneeling is interesting, just as a symbol. So, for example, the kneeling on Floyd, what does that symbolize? It has to do with, I think, it may reference, go back to the kneeling during the national anthem, which was popularized by Colin Kaepernick, who is synonymous with the 1619 Project and that whole line of thinking. And of course, he was the quarterback during Super Bowl 47, which they call the Blackout Bowl because it went dark for 33 minutes. All right, let's move on here. G33 says, good observation, Tim. San Francisco next. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Maybe San Francisco is next. Elephant Tusk says, the movie 13th Floor is a movie about how we live in a simulation. Has a newspaper dated June 21st, 2024. Many speculate this is a key date. Good to know. Good to know. And there's a link there in the YouTube channel for the caller's YouTube. And from there you can find his podcast links. We're going to do a follow-up soon. There's a few symbols I want to delve into that are highly relevant to what we're always examining and looking at. And I'd like to really get into the symbol of the cube, what it really means about this realm, Saturn, time, space, control, the cycles of death and reincarnation, etc. But we will definitely be communicating again, podcasting, but also in the Discord servers. So after this live stream, for example, we could go into Discord if there's enough people there. Infinite Plane Radio.
John the Plumber, coming out of Southwest Florida.
Hey, what's up, John the Plumber? How was your Easter weekend?
I don't know. I work a lot, so like whenever I don't have little Victor, my son, I'm working because I'm a single guy. But you know, I feel grateful to have a job and stay busy. And it's like we live in a world that's slowly creeping into this digital space, like we're just all in the matrix, right? And I feel like I do one thing that's going to require people to clean up the shit buckets. Until we just go full cyborg, I don't know. There's going to be plumbers, and and I feel grateful to stay busy. Like I just look at people. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna tell you a story, Tim. This is crazy, dude. I was like in a neighborhood. I do warranty for a company, plumbing, and I see these old guys. They're jacked, dude. They got no shirts on. They got white hair. They're ripped, right? They're on the side of the road, and they're like getting ready to go exercise. It's like a group of three old guys, and they're like getting on their bicycles and stuff, and they're gonna go do old school bicycle, right? And at the same time, like 2 seconds later, I see 3 or 4 young kids on their e-scooters looking at their phones on the scooters. I'm like, we're fucked, man. If this is the world, if the next group of people all they do is like play with their phones and do e-scooters and nobody exercises anymore, and if a 7-year-old guy could kick a 20-year old guy's ass, we're fucked, man.
Have you seen Wall-E, the Pixar movie?
Yeah, I own it.
Okay, okay, that's our future. That's our future. Everybody is well tended to by robots. They drink these Soylent Green like slushies, and they get really big. Their muscles atrophy, their bones disintegrate, and they're just like these blobs. But they're happy, and they're always plugged into the screen, always just slurping on the straws and consuming, consuming. But all their needs are tended to, and they're safe, and they're in space. So yeah, that's the future.
I mean, I don't think like I'm not okay. When I was 30 years old, I lived for the gym. All I cared about was being strong and looking good. I'm not at that point anymore in my life. I'm a father, and I'm much further along. But I think like you should try to be healthy and try to do something. Like if you sit at a computer all day long, you probably should go to the gym for an hour a day. But if your job is jackhammering and lifting up 2x4s all day long, you probably don't have to go to the gym. Your job is hard enough, you know. But like if we just live in a world where like the 7-year-old, 60-year-old guys are jacked and like young guys are just like, Tinkerbells, we're in trouble. Maybe China should take over.
Maybe maybe
Maybe
it's
we
just
deserve to get nuked. I don't know.
maybe it's just your part of Florida. It really depends, but I do think it's increasingly possible to live as a comfortable blob, a happy blob, and that there's no penalties to it.
To
You
me, life is not about happiness. It's about being useful and productive. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a communist, right? Like that sounds like communist bullshit. Are you useful to the world? But that's what I really care about. I don't ever want to be a person that just lives for a personal experience. I want to be useful to the world because to me, I look at the world as like this big giant puzzle, right? Everything has a purpose. Everything has a function. And if you're just like living for Instagram and popularity and coolness and whatever, and you can't make a fucking thing, then the world sucks. Then like that's what I try to teach
but
my son. Be useful in the world. Find something that you're good at and fix it.
sure, sure. I can kind of see that. I understand that. Nobody thinks that we should be mindless, corpulent dependents, but I think that this world is making it increasingly possible to spend more time in the metaverse over the meatverse. That's definitely the case. Now, the question is, are we going into the metaverse to save Gaia and maintain peace, and will it be peaceful, or are we all being dumbed down and filtered into some kind of permanent digital dark age like Wall E to the detriment of our meatverse experiences? And that may be the case. And these days, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I hate to even speculate, but Neuralink and all this stuff, they're not that I believe any of that stuff is true, like digital transcendence, but if I was a little more superstitious and paranoid, I might be inclined to think that the agenda here is to stop all souls from leaving and force them to reincarnate into some kind of nightmare Elon Musk generated metaverse type situation. What do you think? You think that this is some kind of a soul trap?
I don't even know what this world is. I am so like I feel dumber than ever. Like I found the flat Earth uh, in 2016. I probably discovered your channel a few months later, and it's like before that, man, I was just like memorizing facts and figures. I'd watch all these like space documentaries. I knew how big the Milky Way was. I knew what our closest galaxy was. I knew how far away it was. And I was like, fuck, it's all gone, dude. None of that's real. What do I know? I don't know anything. So now, like now, I don't know, 8 years later, it's like, fuck, man, like we don't know anything about this world. The only thing I really know is that my mind exists. I don't know if I'm in a digital plane. I don't know if I'm a cyborg and fucking in hibernation. I have no idea what this world is. So I can't feel emotional about anything. Do I care about Israel and Palestine? Fuck it. I don't care. Which side should I pick? Fuck it. I don't care. I don't know what this world is. They say, oh, Apophis is going to hit in 2029. Fuck it. I don't care, dude. We could be living in a video game. I could be like, what was the movie with Ryan Reynolds, right?
Free
Just
guy.
came out.
This may
Free
count
guy.
again.
I could be a free guy.
It may count against you in the future if you're not giving any loosh to the current things. If you're not giving an F about whatever it happens to be, it may send off a flag. Like I just noticed after checking my health app that it monitors my every step. And what if you don't show any sort of support for the latest current thing? Like you don't care. Not caring about the fake news could be criminalized in the future. It's like not going to church. Like you're
Yeah.
supposed to participate.
It's gonna hit your social credit score. You're like, well, fuck, I don't care. I don't have the mind. What do they call it? The Elon Musk brain chip. I don't have the brain chip. What do I care, dude? You've been holding on to this cybernetic digital fucking piece of technology. God knows what it can really do. You don't know if it can just read your emotions, every thought, just by touching it. How many hours do you think you've held a smartphone in the last 20 years? I mean, it's probably thousands of hours, and
Well, look,
it
look,
probably
it's
knows
too late.
everything about you. It probably knows you better than any person, any spouse, any wife. Your phone, the system, the grid, the world knows you better than you probably know yourself. Like there's probably things that people lie to themselves about. I don't know what I'm really into. This is a persona, but your phone knows you, and it pops up weird shit all the time that you weren't even expecting. So where the fuck are we? What is this place? I don't know. It's really hard to like trust people, or form relationships, or like even navigate life. When like you can't trust anything.
See, I don't really feel that necessarily. Like, I mean, I understand most conspiracy theorists are portrayed as being alienated, their beliefs separate them from normies. But I think as long as you recognize that every person has their own frame of reference, you can get along with anybody, anywhere, and have no friction. You can hang out with atheists if you're a believer, and vice versa,
Yeah,
as long as you know
they're
what.
5 minute friends. They're
Well,
like 5 minute friends, like in like Fight Club, like we're like single serving friends. So these are people you talk to for 30 seconds, customers, people that you just like Uber drivers and stuff. But like if you never saw them again, I guess it wouldn't really matter,
Well, what I
you
mean
know?
is, like, you can be friends, but you would have to know what lines you can't cross because they just won't comprehend. Like someone who's a pure materialist, reductionist, maybe someone who believes in the meaninglessness of everything, and the world's going to grind to a halt. Universe is folding in on itself like a taco. We're all going to die regardless. Nothing means anything. That person is not going to care about or understand synchronicity or the possible cybernetic feedback loop between the individual and the universe provided through meaningful synchronistic coincidences, etc. They're not going to even believe that's a possibility. Telepathy,
I'm gonna I'm
precognition,
gonna tell
nope.
you the main reason why I called you tonight is I know in a way you're kind of like me. You kind of surf the internet a little bit. We all listen to the best of podcasts and whatnot. So, like a week or two ago, I heard Tim Pool talking about how like I don't know, 50% of the population, 70% of the population has no internal monologue. Now, I didn't even think this was possible. I thought every single person in the world talked to themselves in their head. That you would think a word before you say the word.
I don't. I have to admit,
That
I
that's not
look.
true. That's
I
not true. There's people that just spit out shit all day long and they don't rehearse it in their mind before they say the thing. And I thought that's how the whole world works. Is this bullshit? Am I crazy? What's going on?
I don't have an internal monologue. It would be too slow for me. I don't.
Wait,
Like
you
when I'm.
don't ever think about what you're gonna say before you say it?
No, I just hit the on button. It just comes out. I don't have to think about it and then repeat it. The only time I have an internal dialogue is when I'm stuck in the car with somebody I hate and I'm trying not to say it out loud and I'm running through my head what I'm thinking about them. But there are times when I'm forced to be very introspective at the moment where I can't dialogue, but it's really not the case. I don't really have it. I experience peace and quiescence when I'm alone. There's no voice in my head. It's a flow.
Oh my God, I totally have a voice in my head. It
So
never stops,
am I an
ever.
Am I an NPC?
That's what I thought.
I
That's
might.
what I thought. I thought everybody who does not talk to themselves all day long must be an NPC. But maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I just have like a psychological disorder that
Or
hasn't been classified
it
yet.
could be something
Maybe like
else.
only,
It could be something else. It could be
what is
that
it?
the process of taking a thought from impressions, from memories and images and distilling it into words, maybe it doesn't require that it be internally verbalized as a subvocalization before you speak it, and it's probably there. You just don't hear it. For example, I was listening to or reading about. 'Cause I've been around people who suffered from mental conditions where some of them talk to themselves, and what was explained to me is that they're not really hearing voices. When you see someone talking to themselves in the street, someone you would say that person's ill,
Hmm.
they're not hearing voices or talking to somebody, but they're merely uttering all of the subvocalizations that we all have. We all do have a lot of internal monologues going on simultaneously that we don't hear, and some people just vocalize these things. So what I'm suggesting here is that I don't think we all need to actually recognize these before we speak them. I don't. It doesn't mean I don't think before I speak. It just means that I don't process it in that particular order.
Hmm. The crazy thing is, like in my head, the accent changes. So like sometimes I'm John from Connecticut. I was born in Connecticut, and the voice in my head sounds like a northeastern accent, and then I repeat whatever I was just thinking, and it comes out a second or two later. But sometimes that voice changes. There was a TV show in the '90s called Herman's Head, and it would be like this like show where the guy was just like living his life, and then it would like cut frame and it would show his head zoom in. And it was like a living room with 5 or 6 personalities, an old man, an
Oh,
old
okay.
lady,
You
a
know,
young guy, right? And they would talk to each other and say, hey, what should we do next? So sometimes I feel like I'm like one of those people where there's like 5 different people living in my head, and it depends which situation I'm going through. One of those people pop out and
that's a good way of explaining it. I was recently talking to some people about this book I was reading. I was reading a book that posited the idea that we are not the mere ego expression of ourselves, but we have multiple facets. That there's actually like 8 distinct modalities, but that you have to experience each one and integrate it to achieve your full spectrum of who you really are. And that you could be boxed in if you just go with the flow, linear thinking, going with the programming, that you have to have some kind of life experience to get this full spectrum of yourself. But anyway, this is the concept was in a book about what they call chaos magic, and it's all based on the number 8 and the idea of these multiple aspects of the self that exist within one package. And so I'm reading this book, and I go to my friend's house, and they're watching a movie called Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag about an author writing a script called Sleight of Mind. Now, the book I'm reading, the chapter was actually called Sleight of Mind, and it says you have to trick your ego in order to overcome it. Sleight of Mind. So I'm looking at this movie, and it has these 8 severed heads in a duffel bag singing some song. I mean, it's a comedy, but it's kind of grotesque. And it just struck me as a tremendous synchronicity that we do have. It's like 8 heads in a duffel bag, 8 aspects or multiple selves that we call the I. But it's not just one I. It's dependent on relationships, on dynamics between you and your environment, whether you're in a group, you're alone, you're with people you know, and that the self isn't so static as just one person. But anyway, my point being, I guess, is that yeah, I think it's very complex, and that how we express ourselves is very nuanced, and I don't have always this internal voice, except in certain circumstances that I'm even aware of it. I hope it doesn't mean I'm
how
an
sure
NPC.
how sure are you that this is a legit, bona fide, tangible, organic universe or that we are living in some kind of dream world, a spiritual dream world or a digital dream world, but not, maybe we're like living in a memory or a simulation of a world. I say it's 50-50. Personally, I have no idea. I wouldn't care either way. If God came down right now in a freaking light beam or a UFO and said, "No, you're totally dreaming," or if he said, "No, this is real and you're being graded right now and I'm watching everything," I wouldn't care either way.
Oh no, I'm certain it's real.
I,
I mean, in my
you're
opinion,
certain it's real?
well,
We're not in a dream world.
well, no, it doesn't make sense to describe the real as not real. To me, that's gaslighting. From our level of our physical senses, it's real. And it only makes sense to describe it as real and to look at those misdescriptions of it as not real as wrong. From the
If
sense.
you say reality is like what you can actually sense, well, that's like a misnomer because I dream things, right? There's times like where I'm in a dream and I'm in a roller coaster, right? I'm laying in bed and I'm dreaming about going to Six Flags. I can feel in the dream actually enhanced more gravity. I can feel like the ups and the
Your
downs.
your dreams have gravity.
Yes. I mean, I don't know what gravity is, but you know what I'm talking about? When you go on a roller coaster and you go down the hill, you can feel a tickle in your stomach. I can feel that laying in my bed and not doing anything, just sleeping. I wake up, I'm like, holy fuck, I can't believe that I fell going up and down the hill. So how could you sense gravity in your mind if
Sure,
you're
look,
just laying
I
in your bed?
I can scroll my
How is
Twitter
that
feed.
possible?
I'll go on my Twitter feed and I'll see a video of these people who run from rooftop to rooftop and they jump between the buildings, and
Right?
I get vertigo. Like I look at my phone, I get vertigo watching skydivers where I'm like my feet, I feel it at my feet, my palms are sweating,
Okay,
and I'm just looking at a TikTok video.
that's crazy.
But to get to the point here, though, I do think that for the purposes of existence and living as a sane person, I think it's best to assume or act as though reality is objectively real, and then to make the distinction between the augmentations and the superstitions and hyperstitions. So we have a internal concept of the world that we all are supposed to share, and then we have the physical world that we do share, and that's the meatverse. So I just don't want the metaverse to take over my perception of the meatverse, just like I wouldn't want a religion or a cult to distort my perception of reality or any kind of false belief system. So in my view, it's about a war on our minds, and I think one of their weapons is to convince us that reality doesn't exist, so that they can make us more pliable. So I'm saying here that as media skeptics, we need to be objectivists, and we are the only, I would say, the only legitimate objectivists in the world, because objectivism is not possible if you're on the other side of the screen. If you buy into the MSM perspective at face value as an argument from authority, you are a subjectivist. So we are the only objectivists. We're the only ones who have a position, I think, on the issue that really has any authority. So I will not concede and say that reality doesn't exist. I'll say our mental concept is totally fallacious, but that no, it exists.
I feel like the whole world, yes, it is a play. It's this big movie, and there's a director of the movie, of the play, and we are not the writers. We didn't write the play, but we're here anyway, and we're all gonna follow our script whether we like it or not. But at least we're conscious of it. We can deviate. We can say, you know what, fuck this. I want to go do something else. I am aware of the play that there's bullshit going on, and I don't have to 100% go on. Like almost everybody doesn't realize that the world is a play. Like this whole Diddy thing, I love it. It's like when you're a little kid and you realize WWF was fake and you still root for Hulk Hogan anyway. Like there was this little magic period. Okay, there was a period where I thought WWF was real, and then I realized it wasn't real, and I still watched for a couple years until I discovered girls and girlfriends and whatnot, and I still watch. So the world is actually like that, even though I know Donald Trump isn't real or Diddy isn't real, that they're all characters in this made up world. You can still root for the good guy and boo the bad guy and know that they're all just characters in like this movie. sports movie, whatever it is. It's not actual reality. They're all just playing a part. And I think they're not taking orders. I thought that for a little bit. They're just doing what they're told. Nope. They are oblivious. They are following their program. And there's only a few of us that can see it. There might be a few thousand people on this planet that can see. There is no such thing as planets. There might only be a few thousand people in this realm, in this place, that can see that there's weirdness going on. But I can't be mad at Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Diddy. They're just following their program. They're just following what the universe created them to do, and we can see through it.
Well, look, I would say this though. Look, I would argue against the universe. This has got to be men, humans, writing scripts. Donald Trump is a reality TV star who had 13 successful seasons as The Apprentice. You think he went from that to just wandering
I don't
around?
think he's that good of an actor. I
Well,
don't think he could be that good of an actor.
okay, well,
To me, he seems actually genuine. That he
that
believes what he's
good
saying. I don't know.
good actors sound genuine. The fact of it is,
Yeah.
he has been part of the psyop entertainment complex his entire life, going back, hanging out
Right.
with Oprah at 33, saying he's going to be president. The idea that he's autonomous or just
He was
doing
a
his own thing.
character before he was a
Yeah,
person.
look,
Right. Like
there's no
his
chance.
his
There's
characters
no chance.
existed for decades.
There's no chance he's organic. There's no chance that anybody you see on the world stage playing any of these roles is just doing their own thing and following their own destiny. No, these are actors on TV pretending that it's real life when it comes to these psychological operations. And when you say it's the universe, you're actually hiding the fact that it's human beings, directors, cast, people who do the makeup. Like there's all kinds of people involved in maintaining this deception who aren't even scrutinized. We talk about the metascriptors because if we don't, we leave it up to the universe is doing it all. And I don't want to lose objectivity here. And I could be,
Okay.
and here's the thing, I mean, and here's why I know I'm right. We can point specifically to the directors, to the propaganda messaging, and how it ties to contemporary news. There's no guesswork here. It's actually very predictable, and I think there's this trend among truthers specifically to make it seem as though we're witnessing something spontaneous, and that maybe there's a chance that there's going to be some big upsetter to the game like Donald Trump. And no, Donald Trump
I'm
is.
gonna
Go ahead.
let's forget about Diddy for a minute. Let's just go back to like where we were a couple years ago, Epstein, right? The first level conspiracy is that there's a worldwide conspiracy with pedophiles and weirdos, and Epstein knew what was going on. Maybe it was like a government thing. That's the first level conspiracy, and the governments of the world killed him. That's the first level. And most people can't even see that. That's like way over their head. The second level would be is Epstein didn't kill himself. He's not dead. He's somewhere off in the Bahamas living like a king, chilling with his buddies. That's the second level. The third level is there is no Epstein. These people are all fucking Autobots. Nothing is real. It's like Dark City, right? Like one day you're this guy, the next day you're that guy. We're all following the programming from the sky, the gods, whoever runs this fucking place. Is it aliens, angels, demons, Jesus? I don't know.
Yeah, that's an
And
interesting
and
one. Epstein, I would say, is a made-up character. What really made me question that story was,
just like Diddy, right? So then it's like Diddy too. So it's like
well,
this whole Diddy
there's a
thing
difference though.
real?
There's a
Or
difference though. There's a
is there?
difference. There's a
I don't
difference.
know.
There's a difference. With Epstein, we have this character that we've never really seen interact in the world, who has this story built around it. We find out that the temple's just a prop, more or less. But with Diddy, we're talking about something a little more mundane. We're just talking about some individual who may have been abusing his role, his authority, his power. We're talking about drugs and sex. It's not really stuff that's out of the ordinary, unbelievable. As a scandal, could it be manufactured scandal? Probably. I mean, if you go back to the early days of Hollywood, like Hollywood Babylon, that book and later movie, it was all about how, from the very beginning, Hollywood had started creating, or rather, has become the center of scandals, and scandals get attention. So, looking at it from that perspective, it's like, yeah, it's believable, but it could also be an engineered scandal. Like your career in 2024 is going to take this turn, and this will happen because it gets attention, it gets loosh. But I tend to think that if it's on TV, and it involves all these characters who are integrated with politicians. They all share the same backstage. And one more point. You
Jesus,
mentioned
man.
pedos, right? Like, oh, the power elite,
Yeah,
they're all pedos and they're
all
killers.
of them.
Okay, now, people say this, but it's like, I dare you to look at your local sex offender registry and find me one elite among the predators among us. It's like, it's not the elite. It's a bunch of poor people. It's a bunch of trash at all levels of society preying on other people. You cannot just say it's just this elite group, and if we get rid of them, we'll have world peace. No, I'm sorry.
No,
It's bus
no, I would
drivers, it's
never say
teachers,
that.
it's priests.
I would
No, I
never say that.
I just point out that whenever
I live
people
in a
start,
dumpy ass neighborhood, and I'm sure there's scumbag rich people, there's scumbag middle class people, and there's definitely scumbag poor
yes. So
people.
we have
You
to
know, but
remember
but
human
then
nature.
I've met kind-hearted, loving poor people that are like, you could meet like a 40-year-old guy that's got like the mind of like an 8-year-old, and his parents just died. They had them when they were old, and they died, and it's just like a poor retarded guy living out in a fucking tent. You know, like that happens too. They would never want to harm a soul. And so when I meet those people, I have no problem giving them 5, $10. But yeah, like they're scumbags all across.
Yeah,
Rich,
yes. I
poor,
really stray
and
from
and
any attempts to scapegoat all of humanity's ills on one group because it doesn't work. It's always a projection and it's an oversimplification. But for the most part, the the conspiracy theories I think are there.
I saw something crazy tonight I've never seen before. Now, being in Florida, we have always launched shit into the sky. I'm not going to say space because I don't even know if space is a thing. Like, to me, maybe the world only goes up 5,000 miles and that's fucking the end of it. I don't know what the world really is. But I've seen weird shit in the sky. I wouldn't call it UFOs because I really don't believe in UFOs anymore. I've seen like halo things in the sky down here, but I think it's like satellites, SpaceX weird shit. You know what I just saw a couple hours ago? This I've never seen this before. Man, a couple years ago I saw the fucking like an aurora that looked like a turquoise aurora at like 6 in the morning, just like an aurora borealis in Florida, and it just vanished, and I don't know what the hell it was. But you know what I saw tonight, just a couple hours ago? I wanted to call you so bad. It looked like a comet coming out of the ground. Like if you think of a comet with a tail, you think of it coming up high in the sky and coming down toward the ground, like with a tail, like a shooting star.
Maybe you saw the
But
devil, the devil's
I
comet
saw a shooting star coming out of the ground, not out of the ground, but it.
from the
I've never
horizon.
seen an
From the horizon.
airplane.
Well,
Yeah,
the
from the
devil's
horizon
the devil
up.
comet will be visible up through the eclipse, and it's going to have. They call it the devil's comet because it appears to have these horns on each side, and it pops up like every 70
I just
years.
saw it a couple hours ago, though.
You might have seen it.
This looked like it really looked. It started off as like almost like an airplane with a tail, a glowing orange tail, like a I don't know, a ½ inch in the sky, a quarter-inch in the sky. But as it kept going, the tail shrunk and it almost disappeared, and then started to look like an airplane or a star. I was like, "What the fuck did I just see, man? What is that?"
Well, we
I
can.
thought it was like some kind of weird SpaceX shit. I was like, maybe they're launching fucking satelloons or whatever. I don't believe in satellites, but maybe they launch things into the sky, and that's what I think I just saw a couple hours ago.
Yeah, given where you are, that's very likely. And anytime somebody sees lights in the sky, you just automatically rule out aliens, rule out spacecraft, rule out satellites. That would all be, in my view, those would all be non sequiturs. Within the realm of
Right.
possibility, it's going to be a plane, something man made. We don't have evidence for spacecraft or UFOs. And yes, SpaceX does a lot of stuff to what it does is it reinforces the illusion, creates the hyperstition. They need to send those blimps up there with the fireworks on bottom to convince the masses that they're going to space and doing magic, doing miracles.
Tim, I heard the music the other day that you did, the AI music.
Yeah, the AI music's
Hello?
wonderful. What'd you think of it?
I love it. I loved it.
You need a John the Plumber
You
theme song. You got to go to
you you
suno.ai
said
and create a
You
theme song
said
for
that you
yourself.
wanted to put out a record, and I was like, dude, I would totally buy that record for $25. And if Tim Osmond puts out a flat Earth, I would like. Here's my recommendation. Just being a fan for all these years, I would give Chief Crow at least one song on the record. Like you could probably do a couple songs. Do one of Lynn, because she's like freaking. She's like the smoking man. She's like got all the insider information. She must be like one of the smartest guests, not guests, but callers. She knows a little bit about everything. Give her her own song. You could have a John the Plumber song, but and then definitely a Chief Crow song for sure, because I think the Edge is in Your Mind is one of the best intro songs ever. It says everything about the show, so definitely give Chief Crow a song. But I was completely astonished that the internet, the AI is at that level where it could just like just like know what we're about.
Yeah,
Like
I had some
I
people
don't I
say
don't
to me, like one guy said he's convinced now that Linkin Park never existed. And I'm like, yeah, it could be. You listen to so many of these musicians and they could easily be replaced, like right now,
yeah,
indefinitely.
maybe there is no Joe Rogan, right? Maybe Joe Rogan is just an AI. Maybe there never was an Al Pacino.
Okay, I got a
Hey, see,
prediction.
here's the real
Prediction. The next thing
here's
is gonna
the
be
weird
this.
thing. Go ahead.
It's gonna be text prompted podcasts. So like I want a
Oh
podcast
my
about
God.
chemtrails, and I want it to be kind of a
In the
screech.
style of Joe Rogan,
Yes,
cross Bill Maher, right? With like the savviness of whatever.
and then you hit play, and then you're on your road trip listening to a podcast that was just created for you. We're gonna reach that spot. FYI, there's no
What
stopping
if
it.
what if the Beatles never wrote the Beatles? What if we've had this technology for like 50 years and there is a group called the Beatles and they were real
Well,
guys,
we wait
but
before
they
you go on
never
to that.
wrote those songs?
Before we start rewriting the past with introducing AI, you have to remember we have analog for everything, not digital. We have proof, we have guitars, we have drums, we have sheet music. So no, AI is new as far as what it's doing. A lot of people say, well, maybe it's always been this way. No, that's insane. The fact of it is
Why?
we because guitars, because drums, because cassettes and records.
Yeah.
We're
No,
talking.
no, I understand that. I'm saying the creation of the art, the notes on paper may not have been thought of by a person. It could have been thought of by like a HAL
Well,
9000,
that's what I mean.
which was put
That's what I'm
which was
stopping. Look,
printed by paper,
I reject
and then
any divine fallacy.
people.
I reject the divine fallacy because we can't say man didn't do it, man's not smart enough, therefore gremlins, God, Hal 9000, Demiurge. If we throw in the supernatural, we are throwing out logic when we have people we can point to. I mean, easily you could say that they were created by a think tank. Easily you could say a bunch of musicians did it. But where do you think this so-called AI is getting the music from? It's getting the content fed into it. So what? So it's like we have to remember what
Mm,
comes before what. It's a
the
sequencing.
source is organic. It could be perfected through technology. Technology could possibly create something better than any human or organic creature could ever create. But ultimately, the source of the universe is a legitimate, bona fide atomic molecule, real universe. There must be a base universe to everything. We didn't just all appear in some digital code somewhere. There
Right,
is a
right.
real
Look,
world. We
look.
could
Here's
we
something
could
too.
be in the
Some will
real
say,
world.
like, this thing what we're dealing with right now, the psyop entertainment complex, the way that the power elite weaponize superstition, create this closed system of ideas for us to control us. It's not new, but they did it before oral tradition, analog, and basically real world programming, theater as usual, but the mass media has just made it possible to do it in a more decentralized way. Digitizing things, AI, etc., makes it more efficient, makes it easier, but it's not like it ever was ever transcended. Like, for example, the religions have always pretended to be God, and so now to look at the mass media and say aliens or God is behind it, it's to kind of adopt that same kind of mystified state as the religiously brainwashed. So, in other words, I refuse the mystification. I don't think we should mystify predictive programming. Predictive programming was never done by AI, by God, or synchronicity. It's always been propaganda. And this is an important point if we're going to remain in the world of objectivity. By the way, you Beetlejuiced Chief Crow. I think you mentioned his name 3 times, and he's in the chat. Chief Crow and the Flat
Love,
Earthworms.
I love Chief Crow, bro. The edges in your mind should be on the radio. I don't know. I haven't listened to the radio in like 15 years, but if I still did listen to the radio, the edges in your mind. There's so many good songs. My son loves Chief Crow. My 12-year-old, 11, 12-year-old son, he loves Chief Crow. God bless him.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, for those who don't know, Beetlejuicing refers to saying somebody's name 3 times, they show up. You know, if you say I can't breathe, say I can't breathe 3 times, and Benjamin Crump will show up.
Jesus. Tim,
Now,
I love you. I don't want to take up too much time, man. I don't want to take up your whole night. Hopefully somebody else, I want to hear from somebody old school that's been listening for 4 or 5 years. I don't know. I like when new people call in too. That's always interesting, like especially like when we get foreigners, Europeans. That's like, holy shit, this thing's going all the way across the
foreigners.
ocean to the other side of the world. People are listening and talking about this
Look,
thing.
there are
It's
no
pretty
foreigners.
cool.
There are no foreigners. We're
There's
all
no
one.
foreigners.
We're one nation, one government, one massive mind
We're
control.
all underneath one great big firmament.
Well, or we're all underneath the thrall of one monolithic global mind control machine. Appreciate the call very much, and definitely.
Take care, brother.
Have a great night.
God bless you, man. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Likewise. All right, that would be John the plumber. And I really do push back against anybody trying to say that man isn't behind this stuff. And recently I've been suggesting that to throw out man, like, oh, there's no way man could be responsible for these eerie coincidences. It has to be a hypercomputer, a supercomputer, something that doesn't exist. That's like saying computer hacking is way too sophisticated for mankind. It's got to be gremlins. And if you go with that, maybe you get good at fighting off gremlins, but you never arrest anybody. You never find the culprits. And I'm not trying to arrest anybody. We're just criticizing their work. But we are identifying the actual culprits here. And Ufel says we are all apes. We may be, but the question is, are we apes by nature, or are we wearing the ape suit for a period of time as we run through this labyrinth? And I think that's the case. I think we're using the ape suit as we navigate the labyrinth, and the system here is designed to trick you into thinking that's all you are, and that there is no meaning. And I think that is really the main game here. This place seems to me something of a soul trap. AJ206 says the edge is in your mind is a masterpiece. Yeah, the edge is in your mind, the assumption that it even ends. The curve is also in your mind. For those of you curverts out there, you've never seen the curve. The curve is only something that can be perceived when you look through the TV screen and you accept what you see on the screen as objective reality because you have been reality compromised. Your mind has been filtered. You're in the box. I'll go ahead and pull up that track, The Edges in Your Mind, from Chief Crow's Bandcamp and YouTube, and I'll put a link below for those of you who are not familiar with the track. There's actually a few versions of it here. There's a live version of it. There's a version of it on Amazon, Apple Music, and Bandcamp. So I'll put a link in the chat. And if anyone has any links, feel free. Dewis and Paris says the fringe is in your head. Yeah, we're on the cutting fringe. The cutting edge here. The fringe is the cutting edge. That's what people miss. If you look at the screen, that's a painting by Salvador Dali. And this is the one that has, it's the crucified Christ over cubes. And this is actually Easter weekend, so it's perfectly timed. And we were just talking about Salvador Dali's work. This is the Corpus Hypercubicus, oil on canvas painting of the crucifix. And the symbol of the cube as a symbol of the material realm can be unfolded into a cross. And you could look at the story of Christ on the cross as a symbol of overcoming the material realm, overcoming the cube and its domination over the flesh. And of course, there's a lot of fascinating synchronicities, or rather symbolic connections between the cross, the cube, the X, and this entire body of symbols. Erica Creech says, Tim, if it's global but the nations don't know and see real geopolitical enemies, it could be the Jesuits or something like it. Yeah, however we label it, it is centralized. It is 100% centralized. But you can look at a group like the Masons, the Jesuits, the Jews, or the Reptilians, or the Deep States. And you can look at all these groups, but what we're looking at is so all-encompassing, it hardly even makes sense to look at one group, because then you miss the big picture. And I don't think it's a whodunit. I think it's a what is it. It's a structure thing. And this thing is so old that it's older than any of these groups we could name. So it doesn't even make sense to identify it. Oh, it's the Jesuits. Well, before the Jesuits even existed, this thing existed. And it conceals itself with conspiracy theories and rabbit trails and lies. It's hidden in plain sight, but we do know a few things about it. We know what it is, how it operates. We know what it isn't. In simplest terms, mass media is a worldview shaping mechanism that creates the state-approved worldview, much like a holy book. But as far as who is behind it all, I think it's a premature question to ask. Psy-Obstacle says, creating false scarcity is the name of their game. Yeah, both in time and space control, which is all implied in the symbolism of the cube and Saturn. What we're looking at here is, for example, limiting your concept of how far you can travel. Is that what they're doing with their attacks or their representations of the airlines, making it seem like it's unsafe to travel? Are they going to stymie our ability to move around? They certainly don't want us to. But then also, we are in the end times. If you're a hardcore religious believer in some cult or some version of Christianity that says it's the end of days, then you're comfortable with that. Yeah, we're in the end times. But similarly, if you're a full-blown member of the Church of Scientism and you believe the science, which you shouldn't believe the science. It's not a belief system, it's a methodology. You should use it. But if you believe the science, you also believe we are in the end times. So they're in total agreement. Elephant Tusk says, I believe the obelisks are related to the original reincarnation system. Yeah, I have a few ideas about this reincarnation thing. You know, I look at the symbol of recycling. Look at the green recycling bin, that cube-shaped dumpster, and it's got the symbol on it, which has 3 nails, like what you would need to crucify somebody, bent into a triangle. And the triangle has contained within it an inverted triangle, making a 6-pointed star, symbol of the earth god Saturn, but also a symbol of the union of the earth and the sky, downward pointing and upward pointing triangles. One of the main symbols of this cult that runs this place, the 6-pointed star, the cube, and various ways of representing this concept, and much older than the Abrahamic faiths. In fact, I would say Abraham is Saturn. Look at the images of Abraham with the knife about to stab his kid on the hill, compared to the images of Saturn with the scythe or Kronos eating his child. All the same. But I see the recycling symbol associated with the earth god, and recycling of souls is what we're talking about. Angle of Elevation said, would the opposite of mass media be the massless media? The opposite of mass media. Well, what mass media does is it's the collectivized frame of reference that creates the massified mind. They want us all to be Truman in this Truman Show. So for us to be Truman, we have to follow along with this version. And so the person who has been perfectly molded to believe the news is someone I would consider to be massified. So to even be part of the mass media and to be mind controlled, you have to be properly prepared and indoctrinated. They have to get rid of your critical thinking, and they have to condition you to accept the screen as an authority. I would refer to those of us outside of the mass media, those of us who are truly off the grid. You can't get off the grid in a bunker, hiding out in the woods. You can't get off the grid turning off your phone and thinking you can bury your head in the sand. You can only get off the grid if you can do so mentally first. I'm already off the grid. So you could say we're self-mediated. or perhaps non-mediated. But we don't have the massified mind. We've stepped out of that. Once you exit your personal Truman Show, and you can't really go back in once you've figured it out. You may not have all the answers as to what it is, but once you see it's a show, you see it. But the fact of it is, we're not one person. We're basically a world of Trumans in a massive Truman Show. And the whole irony of it, of course, is that he was a false man until he recognized it, and he didn't become true until he left the show. And see, I've left this show. I'm immersed in it. I'm entertained by it. I am very intrigued, and I've never been more engaged in trying to understand the world and everything in it as I am right now. But I'm not triggered by it. I have no fear, no dread. I am unperturbed. I'm not scared of nukes. I look forward to the simulated nuke, the mushroom cloud, whatever's coming to Seattle. And I'm even okay. I'm prepared for the lockdowns when they lock us down for fallout. Like, we're going to have to wear masks, and we're going to see all the scared people. It's not going to slow me down. And having gone through 2020, I will have no expectation that Trutherville is going to wake up and snap out of the trance. We know they won't. If they're in Trutherville, they're lost. Just as Normieville. Just as Woketown. But knowing this, we're in a great position. So whenever they pull off the next major psyop, those of us who have already stepped beyond the screen will be able to aggregate. And there'll be a clear distinction between our position and theirs. Just wait for their overreaction. That's why I'm looking forward to what's coming this year. And I've described it as a planet killer. Auto Hoax 2024, planet killer rock on its way to the world stage. And when it hits, it's going to be a disaster. Well, it'll be a disaster for them, whoever has to clean up our mess. And our mess is what? Basically, we are going to be unleashing a wave of skeptics in the middle of a psyop-rich environment, challenging the sources of the propaganda and the psychological operations directly. And that's what's changing. You see, what most people do is they challenge the media narratives. Alt media regurgitates the narratives and puts their spin. I'm not interested in regurgitating mainstream and alt media narratives because I know where it's coming from. I'm interested in rather challenging the sources. And alt media has been challenging mass media forever. Nobody has challenged alt media from a skeptical position. Only the mainstream media's position. And there's no internal skepticism on the world stage. But anyway, what we're bringing, what this represents, this objective, skeptical group, once it reaches critical mass, what it represents is essentially the equivalent of a planet killer. And as far as what happens next, there's this, people are lost. People who are collectivized are lost without their collective. People leave abusive relationships, they go into other ones. They're not ready to take control of their own lives. People leave cults. They join other cults. Some will say, how can you be an anarchist? Without government, it would all be chaos. How can you be an atheist? Without God, you would just be a wicked, terrible person. And I challenge these notions that you must have a rudder to know how to proceed in the world as a thinker and as a good person. You need to be steered, and I kind of disagree with that. I don't think you need the mass media as a rudder so you know what's going on in the world. I don't think you need that. I think you can recognize it as a viewpoint, but you can have your own perspective as your primary frame of reference for your entire life here. Skyfish says, all the predictions are so coast to coast exhausting, it's like a cry wolf situation. Yes, since when did truthers become doomsayers? Every time there's an eclipse, they act like it's the end of the world. Like, how did that become a replacement for what the mass media offers? For like the last 6 months, I've been saying that Normieville is actually a happier place. You'd be better off there. Like, I don't wake the normies. If I have normie friends, I'm like, I wouldn't dare mess with that and offer them something like, oh, you thought everything was good, but you didn't know that those cirrus clouds are poisoning you and you can't drink the water. And military age men are coming to take your jobs and kill you. And George Soros and Vaxageddon and black goo and Neuralink. I mean, you just go through this list of things where you can tell them, hey, you thought everything was good, but it's actually a nightmare, which is a form of gaslighting. Just as the mass media gaslights the masses into an alternate reality game that's full of terrifying propositions, alt media does the same thing. It's a self-brainwashing operation. Just like you join a doomsday cult. You're brainwashed, you're terrified, you're God-fearing. Now it's time to go knock on doors and say, hey, you thought everything was good. It's actually not. The world's going to end. Pass it on. Ryler05 says, Rapture prediction people never get called out on how wrong they are. And that's going to change. 4/9. Mark your calendar. April 9th, if the world hasn't ended, if we haven't had earthquakes across the line of totality, if we haven't had internet blackouts worldwide, if World War III, Civil War II hasn't commenced, if aliens haven't descended, no Project Bluebeam, if nothing happens but nothing burgers on 4/8, every one of these prophets needs to be called out and then deleted. I'd say overall, I think we could do without them. I think we can go ahead and outgroup them. I mean, we're outgrouping ourselves. You see, Trutherville is contaminated by all kinds of false prophets, grifters, QAnoners, and you can't kick them out. It's a big tent, and this big tent doesn't have any kind of standards. So what we have to do is we have to auto-quarantine. We have to leave. We have to go on an exodus, and that's what we're engaged in right now. Dinah South says, I can't wait. The false prophet roast. Exactly. All right, this is Chief Crow. The Edge is in your mind. I'll put a link in the chat, and we'll be going over to Discord shortly, and I'll also put a link in the chat for that. Thanks to the callers. Thanks, commenters, and we'll see you all later.